This Week in Gaming with Naomi Kyle.
Hello, fine folks. I'm Naomi Kyle, and welcome back to This Week in Gaming. This week, we're checking in on Marvel's new tactical shooter, the PS2 clears a new milestone, Neuralink scores a win for accessibility in gaming, and the subscription-based model for gaming may be running out of steam. Get it? Steam? We've got all of this week's gaming news, so let's get started. GameStop, the popular video game brick-and-mortar store, which for Canadians used to be known as EB Games, announced job cuts amidst declining revenue. To add insult to injury, the company's shares plummeted 16% following the news, a sharp contrast to their 2021 stock boom. As for the reason for the cuts, Wedbush securities analyst Michael Pachter said an increasing mix of digital downloads is hurting physical retail, and there is simply no reason to go to the store if a consumer can just order a game and download it immediately. Still, GameStop is trying to stay afloat by decreasing their expenses and removing operations in Ireland, Switzerland, and Austria, but even with that, GameStop's revenue fell from $2.23 billion to $1.79 billion compared to the previous year. Yes, sadly, as GameStop grapples with the digital age and shrinking revenue, I fear tough decisions are on the horizon for our beloved retailer. Take-Two Interactive has published many games over the years, games like L.A. Noire, The Outer Worlds, GTA 4, and my personal favorite, Space Station Silicon Valley for the N64. There I go, showing my age. Anyway, the point is they've been doing business in the gaming space for a long time. So it came as no surprise when earlier this week, Take-Two came to an agreement with Embracer Group Gearbox Entertainment for a whopping $460 million. The transaction is expected to close in the first quarter of 2025. If the transaction goes through, Take-Two will have sole ownership of Gearbox's many intellectual properties like Homeworld, Risk of Rain, Brothers in Arms, Duke Nukem, and Borderlands, which, as some listeners may remember from a previous episode, will be releasing a movie in August of this year. I can't wait. It has been said time and time again, Xbox Game Pass is currently the greatest deal in gaming. And that's not just my opinion, at this point, it's an objective fact. I mean, where else can you get access to games like Starfield, Halo Infinite, Minecraft, and as of earlier this week, Diablo 4? That's thousands, maybe even millions of hours of gaming goodness for just $16.99 a month. Sounds too good to last? You may not be the only one. The indie devs behind Slay the Spire, Darkest Dungeon, and many others at GDC 2024 claim that Xbox Game Pass and Epic Games, as we know it, may not be around for the foreseeable future. As it turns out, Casey Yano, co-founder of Megacrit and developer of the indie darling Slay the Spire, and Chris Bourassa stated that Microsoft has reached out to fewer indie devs with offers to host their titles on Game Pass. They went on to mention that Epic Games has walked back their strategy to bankroll indie games in exchange for exclusivity on the Epic Game Store. Game Pass and the Epic Game Store have been in a constant struggle over the years, as Microsoft's subscription service hasn't gained new paying customers as quickly as they had hoped. Meanwhile, the Epic Game Store hasn't crossed over into the realm of profitability after their start over 5 years ago. So what does this all mean for us? Well, you'll be glad to know that I am far from finished talking about this, as I'll be going over this topic more in depth with today's guest and resident Xbox enjoyer, Kahlief Adams, later in the show. So be sure to stick around. Marvel games have a lot of irons in the fire in the free-to-play space lately, and in a trailer earlier this week, Marvel revealed their latest free-to-play venture, Marvel Rivals. Rivals is a hero-based tactical shooter like Overwatch or Valorant, games where players control heroes in an arena setting and work with other players to complete an objective before the opposing team. Players can choose their champion from a deep and varied roster of heroes and villains like Magneto, Black Panther, and Spider-Man. PvP matches will pit players against each other in matches of 6 versus 6. The matches will take place in a variety of stages from iconic Marvel worlds like Asgard and Tokyo 2099, all containing destructible environments. The main mechanic setting this tactical shooter apart from the rest is each player's ability to use what Rivals is calling team-up skills. With these skills, heroes can synergize their attacks with other heroes on their team to devastating effect. Examples shown in the trailer include Rocket Raccoon jumping on Groot's back and the Hulk unleashing gamma radiation to charge up Iron Man's armor. The possibilities seem endless. While this game unfortunately does not yet have a release date, and no mention yet if it will come to consoles, the PC gamers will be pleased to hear that Marvel Rivals plans to host an alpha test in May where players can test out a few of the game's features and heroes. You can sign up right now on their website marvelrivals.com for the alpha test sometime next month. The tactical shooter is a rapidly growing genre of games. Overwatch 2 alone had made Activision Blizzard $100 million in just 3 months of its release back in 2022, so it comes as no surprise that Marvel has created this game to get their slice of the pie. I guess the only question that remains is what is next for Marvel? Can we expect another Fortnite collab, or will they go toe-to-toe with Fortnite and release a battle royale of their own? Only time will tell. Moving on to some corporate news, Jim Ryan had announced back in September that he would be retiring and subsequently stepping down as CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment. Well, my friends, the day has finally come. Jim Ryan, after a 30-year tenure at Sony, has stepped down as CEO and passed the torch off to fellow executive Hiroki Totoki. We're all thinking it, I know. Okay, haha, April Fool's, right? While at first it seems like this is just the most elaborate April Fool's prank in gaming history, it turns out this transition is likely to be permanent, as April 1st marks the start of the fiscal year for most Japanese companies. So a special thank you to Jim Ryan for his extended dedication to the craft, and for everyone here at Twig, we wish you a retirement filled with relaxation and some great video games. The success of the Sonic the Hedgehog movies cannot be understated, and that's why they're making a third movie and a spin-off TV series for the famous Blue Blur. With news this week that the third installment in the movie franchise has officially wrapped production, a new poster for the Knuckles series dropped to get us even more excited. The new series is set to air on Paramount Plus on April 26th, featuring 6 episodes exploring the live-action adaptation of Knuckles, played by Idris Elba, and set between the timeline of the second and yet-to-be-released third movie. In the new poster, we see Knuckles donning a cowboy hat with a mischievous look on his face, paying homage to the original animated series. Oh, and the Sonic 3 movie comes out on December 20th of this year for those who don't know or were trapped in the Mushroom Planet. Don't worry, it happens to me all the time. In more Hollywood news, the much-anticipated Among Us animated TV series announced 3 more cast members will be joining the crew. Dan Stevens of Downton Abbey, Kimiko Glenn, who starred in the Netflix original Orange is the New Black, and from Yellow Jackets, the very talented Liv Hewson. And thanks to a blog post on the Among Us developers website, Inner Sloth, it appears that we can expect one final round of voice actors to be revealed before the series airs. Will Jenna Ortega be cast as Pink, Timothée Chalamet as Brown, or Noah Schnapp as Lime? We want to know, who do you think will be cast as the next Among Us crewmate or imposter? Tell us your dream cast and tag me at Naomi Kyle on social. Gaming is for everyone. I mean it. Big, short, young, old, everyone deserves an opportunity to be entertained and connect with their family and friends. The same, of course, goes for people with disabilities that might prevent them from picking up a controller or using a mouse and keyboard. Well, one gamer overcame their disability and celebrated by pulling an all-nighter playing the popular turn-based strategy game, Civilization VI. After surviving a freak diving accident, Nolan Arbaugh was left immobile and totally paralyzed from the shoulders down. Normally, Nolan would play games using a specialized controller that gives him control over a cursor using his mouth, but this time he opted to play Civ by using the Force. Neuralink. That's right, a small computer implanted into Nolan's brain allows him complete control in a video game and says it feels crazy, like I'm using the Force or something. This is a huge win for accessibility in gaming, and we can't wait to see what Nolan plays next. Maybe Pokemon or Call of Duty? Who knows, we may even see him in the esports circuit in a couple years. The sky is the limit. During an hours-long session of strip mining for diamonds, anthropologists think we've found what could be the first example of a prehistoric gamer rage quitting. World-renowned anthropologist April Frost recounted the situation for Twig reporters in a special interview. "I was strip mining like normal and totally not using an X-ray texture pack or anything, when I saw what appeared to be a fossilized can of Mountain Dew Code Red poking out of the rock." He then added that he found an Atari 2600 controller embedded in bedrock, leading to his hypothesis that this is the first evidence of rage quitting in human history. This exciting discovery for gaming history could be the next step to uncovering what our ancestors did to entertain themselves before the advent of video games. Who knows, we might even be one step closer to discovering the missing link between video games and board games. So that's the news this week. It's now time to talk to our guest, Kahlief Adams, who joins us to chat about digital games and physical games and how they're evolving. Hey, Kahlief, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be back, as always.
Yeah, as always. And we do have an interesting topic. It's a little bit left field, but I want to talk about Xbox Game Pass, this discussion that, it's not getting any more numbers, it's not growing. In your opinion, does it look like it's going to be sticking around any longer? Does it look like it's going anywhere?
I mean, that's a real tricky question because it feels like there's a lot of energy around Xbox in general that is feeling kind of shaky in terms of what players are feeling and their sentiments about the brand and what happens with exclusivity and what happens with those conversations, how that's kind of forming an opinion for a lot of folks. I still think Game Pass brings a lot of value to players. It is a thing that I continue to use on a monthly basis with getting new games that, potentially were going to be something I had to pay for. You're doing the long tail version of it by paying in a subscription model, but I think that has been pretty good. I don't think it's going anywhere, but I wonder if there will be a pivot from the Xbox folks about how much emphasis goes into the program itself in terms of the way they promote it and the ways they talk about it. But I don't think it's going anywhere. I haven't heard anyone yet who has been a subscriber who has been like, I hate Game Pass.
Right.
It doesn't provide me any value. It doesn't give me anything that I want. Like, I've not heard that in terms of the public sentiment. So I think it'll be fine in terms of the grand scheme.
Okay, that's good to hear because I enjoy using it as well. And I do think it provides a lot of value for folks who, want to be introduced to new games, want to play new things every month. And I will say that, maybe this is just, it's reached its peak and that's okay. We always talk about how it's always about the numbers. It's always about making the most money, getting the most subscribers and having growth year over year. But I think it's okay for a program like this to just exist as it is. And, maybe Xbox can continue to have it be a valuable thing for consumers, even though it might not bring in anything extra beyond where it's reached at this point. But I guess that does lead to my next question is, what do you think they could add to the program to make it more valuable or to see an increase in subscribers?
I mean, I think one of the big things they have to do is kind of rejigger their messaging. I think messaging around the service hasn't been necessarily great. When we had Xbox Gold, that was a part of those conversations, and then that rolled into, all right, so now you have Gold, now you have Game Pass Ultimate, or you have Game Pass PC Ultimate, or you have, there's all these kind of like different layers of what Game Pass is trying to do, but it never really felt like the kind of straightforward messaging got to the consumer in a way that felt really good. So that's a thing from the kind of business side of it. They need to tighten that up alongside most of the Xbox kind of conversation. I think from a month to month basis, the biggest thing that has kind of been not necessarily great has been the offerings of certain games, right? Like I think I got a chance to pull in like MLB The Show this month, which is a pretty reasonable game to think is going to be in a Game Pass subscription. I think most folks who are looking to buy that game are like, well, I already bought this game because of the subscription that I have. I think offering up new games, offering up new ways to connect services, I think those things will be what I look forward to until some of those bigger release titles come out, like a Hellblade 2 or something like that. Like those are going to be baked into the system, but you have to uplift that with more things throughout the year, right? And I think the month-to-month version of it, with so many games in the hopper, feels a little bit long of a wait.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they kind of re-up on those games a little bit faster and get more games to the system and into the whole service faster. I think that'll be really good for folks.
Good advice. Hope they're listening. Epic Game Store, I feel like it's been around 5 years now, and I feel like it's not, the discussion that we had in the news this week was that it's not profitable or hasn't been at all throughout the 5 years. So why do you think this platform is struggling? And similar question to the other one, which is, what do you think they can add to make it better for players?
Ooh, EGS is a totally different beast in that conversation because EGS to me, Epic Game Store, has never really been great as a launcher for your games. Like it's been nice to be able to have a separate place for those specific games, but it's never felt fully integrated into all the other ecosystems that I'm currently using the most, which is, on PC, using Steam in a lot of those ways. There's never been anything on console that has been kind of comparable for what you can connect to EGS in those ways. Like you can connect your social services to it, but there hasn't been a thing that was like, oh, well, if I plug in and buy a game here, there's something that will come back to, or there's some crossover between the console space and the PC space, which again, it's very PC centric. It's supposed to be PC centric, but they just don't do a great job of surfacing information that you really need. Like sales, like Steam does every year. Steam sales are huge. People wait for Steam sales all the time. I haven't heard anyone say, "Oh man, I'm waiting for that EGS store sale to hit." That's not a thing that happens. And from a just nuts and bolts standpoint, it's never been a thing that has really worked well in terms of the basic functionality of it. It's always been a really slow download client. Like trying to pull games into that thing feels like pulling teeth. And it's gotten better over the past couple of years, but it's never been great. They still have to work on some of the kind of foundational things that makes a client really good. And until they do that, then it's still going to be like the redheaded stepchild of the the downloadable game client stores. So I hope they get that together, because there's a lot of good things that are happening in Fortnite and in some of the games that are there. They just don't really get surfaced to the player well.
Right. So maybe just improving the client itself, how the software works, and yeah.
And make it more mobile friendly. Mobile friendly is a big thing too. Like Steam Deck is a huge deal. The ROG, I forgot the name of the device, but the handheld for ROG is really well used by a lot of folks, but all of those pieces still feel really hard to use when you're putting it on a different device that's not a PC. So lots of things they can kind of move that forward with, for sure.
Moving away from this digital download games on digital platforms, what do you think of physical copies? GameStop still is in the news. They're struggling. It's really sad to see, as someone who's collected games over the years, physical copies of games. But what do you think is the future of physical copies of games? And what can GameStop do to break through, stay alive?
Don't they have all that stock money?
Right.
From years ago?
Sure.
What happened to the stock money? I mean, for me, I'm a little bit of a weirdo when it comes to this conversation, because I have not bought a physical game in probably 7 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Like I'm fully on the digital train. Like I think I'm totally fine with things moving into a more digital space. I'm even one of the weirdos who's like, I'm fine with all digital all the time. I'm okay with it. Even I know that there's a whole lot of caveats to that. There's a lot of what happens to your services when things go away, all that stuff. But I also feel like we're in a space where I can get pretty much anything I want instantly by doing things in the digital format. I understand folks who are collectors. I understand folks who are like, these services are going to go away. What if the hardware doesn't work anymore and I still want to play it on that game? Like I get all of those arguments, but I also look at that and say, I don't have room for physical games anymore. I don't care enough to worry about degradation of a physical item and it potentially going away or getting scratched or doing this other thing and then having to replace it, as opposed to trying to figure out other ways where I can supplement that with a digital replica of that thing. So for me, I'm way more in the like, give me everything digital and make it happen there. And physical is a thing for archival folks more than anything else. But digital to me is the wave. I'm fine with that.
Do you think GameStop is on its last legs in terms of sticking around as a brick and mortar store?
I think so. I mean, they've, in a weird way, they've done this to themselves. Like this isn't
Right.
This isn't a thing of like players not paying attention to the market. This isn't even like a big wave of the industry itself saying that physical media has no place in it. Like GameStop has kind of gouged players for a long time. Spending $70 and then getting $15 back on a trade-in is not a thing that's going to keep you in business for a space that really looks for that trade-in market to have some value. Like it is a really good thing if you are a person who may not have means, or you're like a person who spends money, very rarely on games. Like the used market is great for folks who are in that space. But GameStop has always put a barrier to that being profitable. They don't even do sales on their own stuff in a reasonable way that often. So, a GameStop at this point in my gaming life is the last resort. If I'm like, I can't find it here and I can't get it in this other place, okay, I guess I'll go to GameStop and see if they have it. Like that's literally the way I think about that at this point. So they have a lot of work to do if they're going to stay relevant. I don't know how they bolster some of the other things that they've already done in the space for a long time. But I think collectors will always find those places, because you will find a diamond in the rough sometimes. Some stuff that you were like, this game doesn't even exist anymore. Where can I go find it? And GameStop will have that time and again, but it's still very rare for that to be the case.
Yeah, I wonder if they should divert to creating a client of themselves, an online way to download games, or perhaps really dive into special edition copies of things and really have it be like for the collectors and just pivot
or they
that
can
way.
go import would be a really good spot for them too. Like I think that's a market that a lot of folks don't really remember is a thing unless you travel a lot. Like everyone I know in the gaming industry who is like, well, I'm going to Japan, I'm going to Akihabara to go see what random Dreamcast game I can go find that's like $7,000. But there's like a space in between where the import market could be a really good space for them to really figure out that stuff, or like go real weird and go like, we do old consoles.
Yeah.
Really old games.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah,
we're providing some ideas. Hopefully they listen as well to figure out what they can do to survive. Well, Kahlief, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
As always, thank you again for having me. Always a chance to hang out and rock.
Kahlief Adams is the host and creator of the Spawn on Me podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Kahlief Adams. Now, before I leave you, let's go over the video games releasing this week. This Wednesday, April 3rd, we have 2 games coming out. Planet Tiles, the Tetris-style ecosystem manager, releases on PC. Deceit 2, the online survival horror that feels like a combination of Among Us and Dead by Daylight, will be free to play on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, but PC gamers can experience this right now for free on Steam. There are 2 more games releasing later this week. On Thursday, April 4th, the 16-bit retro-inspired platformer Freedom Planet 2 zips its way onto all consoles. April 4th, Turbo Golf Racing is just, well, imagine Rocket League, but golf. The golfing racer puts the pedal to the metal on PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox Game Pass subscribers can download it at launch for free. Speaking of which, and seeing as it is the first of the month, we thought you'd like to be clued into some of the free games coming to Xbox Game Pass, PS Plus, and Epic Games Store. Coming to Xbox Game Pass through the first week of April, we have Ark Survival Ascended out today. Both F123 and Super Hot Mind Control Delete are coming on April 2nd, and as previously mentioned, Turbo Golf Racing will be on Game Pass April 4th. And coming to PS Plus, we have Immortals of Avium, Minecraft Legends, and Skull the Hero Slayer. These 3 titles will be available for download to all PS Plus subscribers starting tomorrow, April 2nd, and through to May 6th. So, you have some time, and maybe just start the download tomorrow to play it safe. A month goes by quicker than you think. Finally, the Epic Games Store currently has the indie title Islets, free to download, but PC gamers should act fast because this deal only lasts until April 4th. And that's This Week in Gaming. I'm your host, Naomi Kyle, and I had a blast bringing you all the latest in games. Thank you so much for listening. Your listen makes a huge difference. Don't forget to let me know what you're playing and what you think about these stories by tagging me at Naomi Kyle on social. From all of us here at This Week in Gaming, we wish you a fun-filled week, and we'll see you again same time, same place. Thanks for listening.
This Week in Gaming is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more podcasts just like these.